Loretta Castorini, will you marry me?
Moonstruck.
Yes, Ronnie, in front of all these people, I'll marry you.
Do you love him, Loretta?
Ma, I love him awful.
Oh, God, that's too bad.
The Big Easy.
What hell, I've closed the case right now, except for one thing.
And what's that?
I'll tell you over dinner.
And broadcast news.
Wouldn't this be a great world if insecurity and desperation made us more attractive?
What do they all have in common? They each appear on one or both of Roger and my lists of the 10 best films of 1987. I'm Gene Siskel of the Chicago Tribune.
And I'm Roger Ebert of the Chicago Sun-Times. And what we're going to give you are some selections from each of our separate lists. Then we're going to talk about them. Then at the end of the show, we'll give you our #1 choices as well as a complete rundown of each of our top 10 lists. And as of right now, I don't know what is on Gene's list, except I imagine that certain of the movies you just mentioned might be on your list if they're not on my list, which you don't know.
You're really
if they're on
split
both
today.
of our lists, then we're both completely buffaloed. One of my choices of the year's best films is one that came out just barely in time to qualify. It's the new film Broadcast News, which is not only a funny and smart look at the TV news industry, but a very funny and very smart look at the way some of the people in it use deadline pressure to avoid emotional commitments. That wouldn't be anyone like me, would it, Gene? Or you?
No.
The movie
no,
involves...
hurry up and finish your sentence.
The movie involves a romantic triangle, and the first side of the triangle is Holly Hunter as a sharp TV news producer, and Albert Brooks as a skilled veteran reporter.
I read about it in a magazine. That's how you can make sure you don't put on too much perfume.
Could you at least pretend that this is an awkward situation for you? Me showing up while you're getting ready for this date?
Albert Brooks likes to talk his way into a relationship, but the other man Hunter is attracted to, the other side of the triangle, is William Hurt. And Hurt likes her to do the talking.
You knew just when to feed me the next line. You knew the second before I needed it. There was like a rhythm we got into. It was like great sex.
Broadcast News is the first film in 4 years by James L. Brooks, whose first and only other feature was Terms of Endearment. What a track record. And what a good job of taking a complex subject like TV news and dealing with some of the issues involved without either watering down the treatment or getting too complicated for the average audience. You can follow this movie. Broadcast News is satire and comedy and romance, and it's one of the year's best films.
And I agree, it's on my best 10 list, so we now know for sure it's one of the year's 10 best films. I think what's great about it is, unlike Wall Street, which I think takes a real cheap shot at an easy shot at the securities industry, this film both likes the good parts of television, hates the bad parts of television. And in addition, it doesn't even matter if it's about television. These three characters are so finely written and so beautifully performed, it's sensational.
Well, one of the things it has an insight into is the way that all people in deadline, high-pressure jobs, whether it's television or being a cop or being in securities or being in sales, they oftentimes use the pressure of the job as an excuse to avoid personal emotional commitments. And
Well,
he's got them really pinned down in this movie.
Some people do. Another film on my top 10 list is Roxanne, the comedy of unrequited love starring Steve Martin in a modern version of Cyrano de Bergerac's story about a wonderful man with a big nose who falls for a beautiful woman who doesn't realize that he loves her or that she loves him, and here's how they meet.
I'm locked out of my house.
I can get you back in. Come on inside, I'll get some tools.
I don't have any clothes on.
You want a coat or anything?
No, I'd really like to stand naked in this bush in the freezing cold.
I'll get the tools.
Thanks.
Somebody locked out of their house.
Need any help, Chief?
Looks pretty boring. I'll take care of it.
That's very funny dialogue there, and Daryl Hannah has never been better before or since. But beyond their relationship, this whole movie is full of great scenes that are slightly off-center, especially featuring that gang at the fire station where Steve Martin is the chief. They're a wild group, and one of them is Michael J. Pollard, who is very funny as one of the firemen devoted to his boss and afraid of anyone mentioning anything in front of his boss about you know what. Roxanne wouldn't make my list if it was only a star turn by Steve Martin. It's much more than that. It's a fully realized comedy, a love story, a beautifully polished piece of entertainment.
I agree with you, Gene, and although it's not on my list of the top 10 films, that's only because, obviously, I found 10 films that...
How close was it?
Higher. It's 12, 13, right, real close, real high up there, and a wonderful performance by Steve Martin.
Well, it's
a movie that is probably going to be around a long time because people will be able to go back to it and know that they can count on enjoying seeing it again.
It's beautiful.
Yeah, yeah. Coming up next, Cher stars in another one of the year's best films.
And this time I'm going to get married in a church and have a big reception.
And who's going to pay for that?
Pop.
What? The best films of 1987, also on my list, is one of the richest family comedies in years. Moonstruck, which is being billed as a film starring Cher, but she's just part of the fun. The whole cast here is terrific, telling the story of a young woman, Cher, who falls for the angry brother of the man she's just agreed to marry. Here, before she meets the brother, Cher pops the news to her father about her intention to get married to a man she really doesn't love.
I'm getting married.
Again?
Yeah.
You did this once before, it didn't work out.
But the guy died.
And what killed him?
He got hit by a bus.
No, bad luck. Your mother and I were married 52 years. Nobody died. You were married, what, 2 years? Somebody's dead. Don't get married again, Loretta. It don't work out for you. Who's the man?
Johnny Camerari.
Johnny Camerari? He's a big baby. And why isn't he here with you telling me this?
Because he's flying to Sicily. His mother is dying.
More bad luck. I don't like his face, Loretta. I don't like his lips. When he smiles, I can't see his teeth. What does he hide?
That's Vincent Gardenia, so wonderful as the father, and his story of how he's cheating on his wife is just as funny as Cher's attempt at a second marriage. The movie is packed with a whole bunch of firebrand Italian characters talking about fate and how people are going to get killed and they should be dead and they shouldn't feed their dogs. Everyone is delivering a wonderful script written by John Patrick Shanley. He's certain to get an Oscar nomination for writing one of the brightest, tightest script in years. I wouldn't be surprised if he wins the Oscar.
You might also mention Norman Jewison, who directed the film. And we're going to talk about that cast of supporting characters. Olympia Dukakis, who plays Cher's mother, is just wonderful in this movie. But then everyone is wonderful in this movie. And, of course, I'm going to have to give it away. It's on my list of the 10 best films, too, because Moonstruck is a wonderful, wonderful comedy.
It's just great.
Absolutely right. Next movie. My next choice among the year's top 10 movies is Barfly, a gritty and funny walk on the wild side about two Skid Row alcoholics who find a little comfort and a few laughs in the fact that they both happen to be drinking in the same bar one day. The movie stars Mickey Rourke as a hard-drinking poet who likes to hang out in gut bucket saloons, and one day he looks up and sees Faye Dunaway, who's come out of nowhere to arouse his curiosity.
I can't stand people. I hate them.
Oh, yeah?
You hate them?
No, but I seem to feel better when they're not around.
I don't know why I find warmth in that cynicism, but I do. This movie is not exactly about a romance made in heaven.
If a man came by with a fifth of whiskey, I'm afraid I'd go with him.
They don't fool themselves about their drinking. They're very honest with themselves and each other about how screwed up they are. Barfly was directed by Barbara Schroeder from a screenplay by the Los Angeles cult novelist Charles Bukowski, who has made a career out of getting drunk and writing about it. The Mickey Rourke character is obviously based on Bukowski, and I like the way both Rourke and Dunaway were not afraid to take chances with their performances. Instead of playing it straight, they went a little over the top, having fun with those weird, tragic, exaggerated lives that they were playing.
Well, I only agree with half of your reaction of the film, and that it was Dunaway's choices. I think she does give a good performance. I think that Mickey Rourke goes way over the top, and for me, ruined the picture. I could not enjoy it because I just felt that his performance was way off center.
See, I think that's where you're being so so unfair to Mickey Rourke, and we had this discussion when the movie came out. So many actors are so concerned about protecting their image and making sure that they don't take a chance that when Mickey Rourke sticks his neck out and goes for a character and is not afraid to go over the top, if that's the way you want to call it, then let's applaud him instead of going ahead and praising all of the... You want to play it so safe.
I just said I liked Faye Dunaway's choice. I didn't like his choice. It's just as simple as that. If he wants to go over the top and it works, I'll tell him. It didn't work for me. Coming up next, a film that takes us behind the scenes into the back rooms of New Orleans, The Big Easy.
Et toi, viens-moi, danse avec moi.
On our personal and sometimes separate picks for the best movies of the year, another one of the movies on my list was The Big Easy, a combination of crime story and love story that was the most entertaining movie I have ever seen from that beloved city of New Orleans. The movie starred Dennis Quaid as a New Orleans vice detective and Ellen Barkin as an investigator from the district attorney's office, and from the moment they meet, it's a case of love and hate.
I cannot believe you were so obsequious with that man.
What does obsequious mean?
It means you had a high-ranking member of the mafia in your office and you kissed his...
Oh, yeah? Well, let me point out a few things to you, all right? First of all, nobody uses the word mafia anymore. Down here, we call them wise guys. You're not from here, are you? I only say this to save you any kind of embarrassment.
I'll bear that in mind, Lieutenant. Anything else?
Hey, you like spicy food? Why don't we have dinner tonight? I know this little Cajun place, man.
Just relax, Romeo.
I liked The Big Easy for all kinds of reasons. I liked it because the characters were so interesting, and not just Quaid and Barkin, but a whole long list of supporting characters. I liked it because of the regional flavor of the dialogue, the music, and even the food that they ate. And I liked it because of the tightly knit plot, which was not just a crime story, but asked some very tough questions. Most of all, I liked it because it was a movie that dealt with crime, sex, and violence, and still acted as if it thought the audience was fairly intelligent.
Well, it's an absolutely wonderful movie. I think Dennis Quaid and Ellen Barkin become 2 stars of the year with this film. And I must tell you that it finished number 11 on my list.
Oh,
and it killed me to have to knock it off. I mean, it just didn't quite make it.
It was number 2 on my list. You liked it so much. How could you leave it off?
Well, because you're going to find out at the end, if you hang around at the end of the show, and I suspect you will, the 10 that I liked more. I really enjoyed the film a great deal, but I found in compiling the list number 11. Who invented 10? I wish they had made it 11. It would have been on my list. My next winner from 1987 is, in my opinion, the best film about young people I saw this year. And there's not a lot of competition on that score, but this film is outstanding. It's River's Edge, directed by Tim Hunter, and it's based on the true teenage story of a teenage girl who was found dead by police long after many of her high school classmates had discovered her body and told no one. Here, late in the film, a TV reporter interviews a couple of the kids about the murder.
You knew the killer?
Yeah. You know, we both kind of knew the killer, you know, as well as, in addition to, you know, who he killed, too. And, you know, because of that, it's pretty hard for us to be,
Objective?
Yeah, that's it, objective. You know, since we did know the 2 alleged people involved and everything. You know, and whereas we might be all, you know, upset this morning or something, you know, we're not, because of the fact that we're not objective at all. I also play guitar, by the way.
I think what's so special about River's Edge is the banality of it all, the casualness. The murder to these kids is just like a nuisance, like a test they'd rather not take. Of course, what's being tested really is their moral fiber. The film sounds right, it feels right, and reveals that first, there is more than just one dead person in that collection of kids. There are a lot of those kids that have died, morally died. And second, we might choose to be aware of the little deaths that are happening around us to our colleagues or classmates, be they teenagers or adults. A lot of people around us are dying, and we don't pay attention.
It was a very strong movie. It was a very touching movie, and it was, you know, it was based on a true story.
I know.
When I read about the story in the newspaper, I was so incredulous. Then seeing the movie, you realize you're incredulous not because it's this big sensational story, because it's such a quiet little sad story of kids who just don't seem to have that little button inside that gets pushed that allows them to feel deeply about things. It's almost as if they were anesthetized.
Did it make your list?
It didn't quite make my list. It's down there on my list about where The Big Easy is on your list.
You mean number 11, real close.
Real good film. When we come back, Gene and I will both separately name our personal choices for the best movie of the year.
Choices of the best films of 1987, and my number 1 pick is the greatest epic film of the year, Bernardo Bertolucci's The Last Emperor, which also manages to be a personal story as well, telling the amazing tale of a little 3-year-old boy who became China's last emperor, was deposed in a revolution, imprisoned during wartime, re-educated by the Chinese in a prison camp, and left to live his final years as a simple gardener. What an arc of a life. Here is the emperor as a teenager, and he's being held prisoner in Peking's sacred Forbidden City. He no longer has any power, as we learn when he tries to attend his mother's funeral outside the fortress's walls.
Open the door. Open the door.
How many of us have been inside the Forbidden City? We get to go inside the throne room itself. I mean, on that level alone, this is a tremendous achievement. Second is the whole idea of this character. Rarely do we see a man's whole life played out, and played out from just the opposite angle, from great triumph right down to seemingly despair, but not despair. It's a happier man at the end of the film than it is a young boy or an innocent boy trapped in this glorious splendor. It's an extraordinary film made by a director who you wouldn't think necessarily would make a great epic unless you've seen his film 1900, and that's Bernardo Bertolucci, because he made the great personal film Last Tango in Paris.
Well, I'm not sure that you would think it would make a great epic even then, because I don't think that Novecento was that great of an epic. But this one is, and it turns the whole idea of an epic right on its head. Here's an epic where the hero is acted upon instead of acting. We're accustomed to seeing people like Lawrence of Arabia or Gandhi, people who go out there and change the world.
Right.
This guy just sits there and watches the world change, and it's fascinating.
Well, how high did it finish on your list? Oh, I'm going to find out in a little while.
I'm going to find out in a little while. Okay,
it had to be up there.
Definitely on my list. My choice for the best movie of the year, though, is not The Last Emperor. It's House of Games. And this was the tantalizing thriller written and directed by David Mamet, who not only assumed that his audience could think for itself, but even assumed that thinking could be fun. The movie stars Lindsay Krause as a psychiatrist who specializes in compulsive behavior. And during an excursion into the world of professional gambling, she meets a card shark and a con man played by Joe Mantegna, and she's instantly fascinated by him. She says she wants to learn how con men operate. He says he'd be happy to show her, and he seems to know what he's talking about.
Do you want to make love with me?
Excuse me?
Because you're blushing. That's a tell. The things we think, the things we want, we could do them or not do them, but we can't hide them.
What is it you think I want?
I'll tell you. Somebody to come along. Somebody to possess you. To take you into a new thing.
This is a movie where you never, ever really quite find out exactly what's real and what's a con. Time after time, you think you've outsmarted the movie, and every time the movie is ahead of you. And all the time, you're getting that hard-edged, angry, Mamet dialogue that seems to be taunting you. Mantegna is especially good here. All he has to do is open his mouth, and we have the idea he's almost daring us to believe what he says. House of Games, my choice, the year's best movie.
Well, it's way up at the top of my list. I think it's a very fine film for all the reasons that you mentioned. I think one of the things that I like about it is, just as I talked about, my pick is the #1 film, taking us to a faraway place. Here's a film that takes us to a faraway place inside ourselves, into our darkest thoughts. Here's a psychiatrist, very established, treating people who have problems with psychosis, but she finds out that when she meets this con man, he has something that she wants to participate in, and she has a neurosis of her own, and we follow her as she follows her own trail, and it's fascinating throughout.
And it's not a realistic film, which is interesting. It's not like it's a little slice of life. This takes place on a landscape in which the only people you see are the people in the movie, basically, and the only things they say are the things they're saying in their head.
You bet. It's all mind games, and it's beautiful. Okay, now here is my complete list of the top 10 films of 1987, starting with number 10 and working our way up. Steve Martin in number 10 slot, very charming, very funny, in Roxanne. Number 9, Stephen Frears' Prick Up Your Ears, about a doomed affair between a successful playwright and his self-hating artist lover. 8, Tim Hunter's teenage drama, River's Edge. 7, Woody Allen's bittersweet Radio Days. Number 6, Norman Jewison's hilarious Moonstruck. Number 5, James L. Brooks's Broadcast News. Number 4, the French epic of murder and cover-up in a small village, Jean de Florette, and its companion film that finishes the story, Manon of the Spring. Third, David Mamet's House of Games. Number 2, Stanley Kubrick's Full Metal Jacket, a cold rumination on the nature of man as revealed in Vietnam. And finally, the number 1 film, that great epic, The Last Emperor. Boy, I like that list as I hear it. Of course, I wrote it.
Well, I knew you liked the Kubrick film, and now I see how much you liked it. That was not one of my top films of the year. Now for my list of the top 10 movies of 1987, starting with number 10, Housekeeping, by Bill Forsythe, starring Christine Lottie as a woman who may be mad or only magical. Number 9, Lethal Weapon, the year's best action picture with Mel Gibson and Danny Glover. Number 8 on my list, Broadcast News by James Brooks. In 7th place, Woody Allen's Radio Days. Number 6, Prick Up Your Ears, with brilliant performances by Gary Oldman and Alfred Molina. In 5th place, Moonstruck. Number 4, The Last Emperor, first on Gene's list. Number 3, Barfly, with those daring performances by Mickey Rourke and Faye Dunaway, not on Gene's list. Number 2, The Big Easy from New Orleans. And number 1, David Mamet's House of Games. I think it's been a pretty good year for the movies, actually, as I look at this list of films and other ones that we could have mentioned.
What's interesting to me is that we agreed on 6, which is an all-time record for us, and what that tells me is that the films that were good this year were very good and declared themselves.
What it tells me is that your taste is getting better the longer you work with me.
I said that up to you last year.
That's it for this year. Next time, the other side of the coin, the worst films of 1987, featuring big stars in bad movies. Not just your run-of-the-mill junk, but we pick on people who can take it because they dished it out. That's next week, and until then, the balcony is closed.
Raisinets and Goobers are playing everywhere, starring plump, juicy raisins and great golden peanuts. Both now feature creamy Nestle milk chocolate. Olive oil from Spain makes chicken, seafood, and vegetables taste fantastic and has no cholesterol. What a healthy idea. Olive oil from Spain. Pledge is self-cleaning, leaves a fresh shine every time you dust. And now Improved Pledge cleans even better. Soft Scent Skin Lotion with vitamin E, where the feel of healthy skin begins.